Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are here with Mr. Joe Scott. He is running for the Broward County Supervisor of Elections. Good morning to you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Daryl. Thanks for asking. Good morning to you, Daryl. Good morning, Wayne. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Doing
All right.
good. So why don't you just go ahead and first of all, we want to thank you for stopping by the Adams Brothers podcast. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come by and talk with us. And we won't keep you long. We'll let you get out there and hit the campaign trail because we want you to do good.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it is the first day of early voting.
Yes.
So everybody, if you haven't already sent your vote by mail ballot back, that needs to happen this weekend. Or you can take it into an early voting site because early voting already started.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so Mr. Scott, tell us about yourself. Tell us about where you grew up, where you went to high school, your education, and why you would like to run for supervisor of elections.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a good question. So, I come from a service-oriented family. I come from a family that has been involved in activism and this type of work for a long time. My grandma Carrie was actually the first Black woman to vote in Wilcox County, Alabama. And, that's something that the family is really proud of. And even, my mom and dad came from, career public servants. My father served in the military 22 years, retired as a sergeant major. And my mother has been an educator for over 40 years. She actually retired from the Broward County school system. And now she's working for Barry University in North Miami. And, this is the type of background that I come from. I come from people that are all about public service. So I actually went in a little bit of a different direction because I started off serving in the military. And then I left the military after 5 years, and I've been in the business world now for the past 11 years. And what I do is specifically I work for a big technology company, and I help large organizations. I work with a lot of government entities here in South Florida, as well as some private companies, and I help them integrate new systems. It's all about improving their efficiency and sustainability. And overall, we want to make sure they have a strong cybersecurity for all these organizations, because that's really becoming a big deal for organizations of all types and all sizes, which is something that I'd like to get into a little bit more once we get over to the, start talking about the Supervisor of Elections office. But, that's who I am. That's where I'm coming from. As a military officer, I spent 2.5 years in South Korea, and then I did a tour of duty in Iraq, where I was actually embedded with the Iraqi army for a year. It was a successful tour for me. I was awarded the Bronze Star Medal, and and really just, overall, I enjoyed being a public servant. What was tough was being away from my family. At that point, my son was actually 3 months old when I left to go to Iraq, and then I come home after I was basically gone for 15 months because it was a sort of train up period, and then I spent 12 months over there. And when I come home, I left this little tiny 3-month-old infant that couldn't do anything. And I get home and I got this walking, talking little kid who, like, literally we come in the house and he goes up the stairs and turns on the TV in his room. I'm like, man, it's crazy. And that's really what drove me to say, I need to go in a different direction. At that point, it was 2009. There was no end in sight. And in fact, we're still in Iraq and Afghanistan today. It was like, if I stay in the military, every other year I'm going to be gone. I'm going to miss this kid's whole childhood. So I went a different direction, went over to the business world, but I miss being a public servant. I want to get back to serving the people. And that's really what, that's part of the motivation that got me to decide to run.
Well, we both just like to say thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.
First and foremost, we can't thank you, men and women, enough for protecting our country and protecting our freedom and liberties. And we just want to thank you a million times over for your service to our country.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Daryl.
You're welcome. So if you're elected, my first question for you will be, if you're elected to the Supervisor of Elections office, what would be some programs or ideas that you would bring to the Supervisors of Elections office?
I think the most important thing right now is that we make sure that we take care of our cybersecurity. one thing we found out after the 2018 election is that there were 2 elections offices in Florida that were actually successfully infiltrated by Russian agents. So this is something that came out as part of the investigation that Robert Mueller did, investigating Russian meddling in our elections. So we did discover that there was interference in our elections. When I first decided to run, I went in and sat down with a couple of the senior leaders at our elections office in July of last year. So this was July of 2019, almost a year after the, after we had learned about the hacking that had taken place. And I just asked a few questions, and I found out that they were just really behind the times. Didn't have a lot of the simple protocols that needed to be in place to make sure that the type of attack that actually successfully happened didn't happen again. So, what I'm saying is that even after, given like almost a year, after knowing that it was called a spear phishing attack, that this happened, they still didn't have the systems in place. And what that said to me was that, it's really not enough to just kind of hire people to be in charge of that. It's really about the leadership at the top and making sure that the supervisor of elections himself, especially when that is such a critical thing for our elections, to make sure that we keep it safe, that we ensure the integrity of our elections. It's critical for the person at the top to be somebody who's going to stay on top of that, who understands these issues, knows what the vulnerabilities are, and knows what systems need to be put in place to keep us from being vulnerable. And it's not about one particular type of attack, because the tactics are always going to change over time. The tactics are going to evolve. And you need to have somebody who understands what those tactics are and understands what's going on in that space and can protect our system. So I spend a lot of time on that, because that's like first and foremost. What people really care about is that when you go to vote, is your vote actually going to count? Are we actually going to, is it really, does it matter if your vote counts, or is somebody coming in and interfering with the election and then causing something else to happen? So we need to keep our votes safe, and that's number one. That's first and foremost. In addition to that, our voter turnout here in Broward County is way, way, way too low. For like an election like we're going through right now. The last time we had this one in 2018, it was like 22.3% turnout. And, these are important, critical positions, and especially people right now are very motivated about criminal justice reform and improving our law enforcement presence. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it's your city commissioners, it's your mayors, it's the sheriff, the state attorney, these people that we're going to pick in the next 10, 11 days here. Mm-hmm. Those are the people that really impact that system.
Absolutely.
So we've got to do a better job of making sure that the public understands the importance, especially of these local elections, and actually turns out and participates. So, I'm really big on the security piece, but I'm also big on voter turnout. And I feel like the way that we win this fight with voter turnout is to make the system more accessible, make it easier for people, especially vote by mail. We need to make it so that people trust the vote by mail system, and that it's very simple, easy to use, and easy to understand for everybody in the community. As soon as we have that down, we'll see our voter turnout levels go up right away.
And that was going to be my follow-up question, and you did touch on it. The follow-up question was going to be that how would you maintain the confidentiality and security of the information that you work with? So you did touch on about the cyber, and I like that, because we really do want to make sure that our vote is being counted and is not being compromised, and we don't have any outside influence. So I thank you for putting that out there, because that was going to be my follow-up question for you.
And really, when we talk about outside influence, there's actually 2 aspects to that, right? So there's there's the foreign aspect, the foreign actors that want to interfere in our election. But then there's the domestic side. The fact is that we have a government in Tallahassee and we have a government in Washington that is really hostile towards people of color voting. And they are out here actively trying to suppress our votes. They're trying to make us afraid of voting. and they're trying to make us cynical about voting. They want people to be cynical, and they want people to be afraid, and they want people to just stay away from it and not mess with it in the first place. And we have to combat that outside interference that's happening as well.
Well, thank you for that. Wayne?
Okay, Mr. Scott, what will you do different as supervisor of elections in this COVID-19 time, pandemic time? What would you do different to keep the office operating efficiently?
So to me, I think it's all about keeping the workforce safe. So we've got to keep all of our poll workers. We've got to keep our poll workers safe, and we've got to make sure that that they're safe, because they're dealing with a lot of folks. And as far as the general public as well, we need to kind of impress on the general public the importance of doing things like, wearing their face coverings. And it's a difficult thing. And the reason that I focus on keeping the workforce safe is because voting is such a fundamental right that what do you do when you have these people, and I'm going to use a little bit of strong language. I'm going to say these idiots that are going to show up and say, I refuse to wear a mask, and you can't stop me from voting. Okay, you're right. It's a fundamental right. Nobody's going to tell you you can't vote. So how do we keep our people safe? How do we keep our workforce safe? And we have to keep that. We have to make sure that we put systems in place that are going to, I want to try to look at how we set up the flow inside these polling stations to get the idiots in and out of there really quickly without having them impact too many other people. Because we know that that's coming. And I don't know how well our folks are prepared for that right now. And I know we're going to see. I know we're going to have incidents on the news. I know we're going to have some incidents that probably go viral on the internet over the next week or so when these things happen, because it's going to happen, because these people are looking for an excuse to make a point. But the fact is that for the people who think that the virus isn't real, 150,000 people have died from it. There's real bodies out there. The funerals are happening. The families are crying. To say that I don't see this, or I don't see it in my own life, therefore it's not real. I really, honestly, I don't have a whole lot of patience for that nonsense. But when you're in these type of, as the supervisor of elections, it'll be my role to just sort of try to keep the poll workers safe, to keep the people safe, and we have to put the plexiglass in place. I'll make sure everybody has an N95. I want everybody to have an N95 mask. There's actually this new mask that I just got that's got a really good filter on it that makes it a little bit easier to breathe, so that you're a little bit more comfortable, but it still has that same level of protection of the N95 mask. I would make sure all the employees have that. Everybody working the polls, I want them to have the most up-to-date equipment, the best PPE that's out there. One thing that's already happening is that they're doing disposable pins. So everybody's getting, everybody who shows up there. I actually encourage folks to go ahead and bring their own pin, or actually bring your ballot, order a vote by mail ballot. Today's the last day. You get your ballot, you fill it out at home in the comfort of your home, and that way you're in and out of there really quickly. You walk in there with your ballot already filled out. You submit that filled out ballot. But if you want to fill out your ballot on the spot, you can bring your own pin. But if not, they're going to give you a pin that you're actually going to take with you. So we're not sharing pins and passing them to other people. There's little things we can do, like using something disposable in order to sign in when you have to get there and you have to sign in. So that's the kind of thing that we can do. There's lots of little things, but we have to just think through the entire process and how we can adapt that process for the COVID times to make sure everybody stays safe.
Yeah, and you're touching on, signing in. Currently, right now, if, like me, I signed up to vote, I registered to vote in 1984. I don't remember what signature I used back then. And currently, you have to go down to the Supervisor of Elections office to see what your signature look like. Is there any way, if elected, you can streamline that to where a person can possibly see their signature without having to go down there? Because you have a lot of elderly people that can't get there. And I'm wondering, is there any way, like even online, we can, in the future, possibly we can look and see how did we sign our signature for like people like me who don't remember from 1984 in high school?
I would be concerned about making it possible to see the signature, and the reason is that if you make it possible to see the signature, then people who have malintent will find a way to see that signature too and then copy it. So what I would try to do and what I would focus on is getting folks to update their information, including their signature. So sending out, I know there was a big effort made this year from the elections office to send out these cards. And I know I had one sitting on my desk before, but they were sending out these cards where you can actually update your signature and send it back in. So then we have your latest or your newest version of your signature online. So for someone like yourself who it's been a while, I would encourage you to just do that, to actually go in and update and do a new voter registration and update your signature.
And also one thing I noticed too, usually in the past, and I know with the COVID-19, we used to get the sample ballot, and I noticed this year we didn't get anything. And I know a lot of people have been calling me asking, what was the problem there, and that's usually when I go there, I go prepared, with everything filled out. So when I go in there, I just go in there and I'm out of there in a matter of minutes. I mean, so I know we did not get no sample ballots this year. So I know that is a concern of everyone.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, there's, it's funny. If you go to my website, electjoescott.com, I have a TED Talk that I did. I actually did this last summer, and I talked about the fact that, we have a supervisor of elections who is not from our community, who is not picked by our community, who was picked by Rick Scott and was sent there by Rick Scott to run the election. And in my personal opinion, he has a very specific purpose of, and it's not to maximize turnout in Broward County. Let's just put it that way. So, there's going to be lots of little things that happen that just puzzle us. We recently had a card that went out to try to encourage people to vote by mail. And, the county to the north of us and the county to the south of us recognized that there was a language diversity in our population, and that we needed to do that any kind of communications we do from our office should be in more than one language. But for some reason in Broward County, we didn't seem to feel like, we have that same level of language diversity and that we need to do that. It is, come on. We know we have, a huge population of people who only speak Spanish. We have a huge population of people that speak Creole. And, and by the way, we don't have an official language, okay? So Americans have the freedom and the right to speak what language they want to speak, and they still get to participate in our system. And we need to be prepared for our population and what languages folks speak and what languages they want to communicate in. And we need to be prepared for that. And we need to communicate with people the way that they communicate. So, so that's something that's one thing that came up. You mentioned the sample ballots, and guess what? There's going to be more problems that are going to happen between now and November. And all we can do is try to catch it. We can call it out, and we can tell, because to me, I feel like it's an opportunity to motivate people to go vote. To say, hey, look at what's happening. If this wasn't important, they wouldn't be working so hard to stop you from voting. Okay? This is important. They don't want you to vote. Go vote.
No doubt. All right, Daryl.
Mr. Scott, have you always been a Democrat? And if not, when did you change your party affiliation and why?
I have been a Democrat my entire life. From my first election was in 2000, and I was a Democrat registered to vote in 2000, and I voted Democrat every election.
And we ask this question because some people come in from, other states and other counties, and they come in as a Republican, and then when they get to Broward County, they change their affiliation to Democrat to try to fool the voters, and vice versa. The Democrats do it too, you know, when they go other places and they want to run for office. And we always ask that question, you know, so we don't get that wolf in sheep clothing, you know, that comes in and try to sneak in as a Democrat and say, hey, you know, I'm a Democrat and I'm a lifelong Democrat, but you were really a Republican before. So we always try to be fair to everybody and ask everybody that question.
Okay, yeah, I understand. It's a good question to ask. You know, because I'll tell you, and it's a good point to bring up, and it, you know, because there's a reason that the people do this. And for the folks who, you know, say, oh, and I hear this all the time, I got you in November. I'm gonna come vote for you in November. I'm gonna be okay in November. I need you now. I need you to vote for me in August. This Absolutely. Is the election. This is the real election. And then you have folks, and especially here in Florida, that if you're not registered as a Democrat, you can't vote in the primary for a lot of the races, other than the judges and the school board and the city officials. When you talk about all these big countywide races, the sheriff, the state attorney, and that ship has already sailed. I was trying to get that word out before July 20th, which was the deadline. But just, you know, if anybody's catching this, if they have their ballot and you're looking at your ballot, because I've gotten some calls. I've gotten people call me saying, hey, you're not on my ballot. You weren't registered as a Democrat. So if you're looking at your ballot and you're wondering why my race isn't on your ballot, it's because you're not registered as Democrat. And whoever wins that Democratic primary is in. It's over. So, you know, you took yourself out of the game. You're not even voting in this race.
Right. And also, if you're elected to the Supervisors of Elections office, will your staff be required to take implicit bias training?
That's a great idea. You know, that's the first time somebody's asked me that, but I'm all over that. So, you know, I actually do believe that, and by the way, we'll do that, and it'll be everybody, by the way, because I almost feel like, and sometimes I would even compare, we think about implicit bias training, we mostly think about that in terms of police officers. But a lot of us face these type of racial incidents that'll happen just in a retail environment. Like you go to a department store. So, and it's not always white people doing it either. Sometimes it's us doing it to each other. I was in a department store one time just recently, and it was a sister, older sister. She was helping me with something, and then this old white couple walked up, and she's like, "Hold on," and goes and helps them. I'm just like, you would have never did that the other way around. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, people need to realize that sometimes, you know, we don't think about these things, and we don't think about how we treat people, and that we suddenly have this emphasis that this person is more important than that person, and we end up mistreating somebody and causing them some heartache. So for me, you know, I'm big on training across the board. You know, I talk a lot about doing training to help folks, to help out the disabled people, to make sure that we're looking for ways to make our polling places more accessible. I don't want to just have it where there's certain people that are trained to do that. I want to train all the poll workers to look for opportunities to make the polling places more accessible to people with disabilities. But at the same time, I do think that training people for implicit biases is critical. And we need to make sure everybody's aware of that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, because some people, you know, training is important because some people may not even realize that they're doing it, you know, being biased. And when, like you say, with the lady was helping you, and then all of a sudden she just walk away and start helping somebody, but maybe she didn't even realize that she did that, you know?
No, she did. I realized she absolutely did not even she didn't think twice about it.
Right,
she didn't think twice about it. I wasn't as important. These people came up and it was like, oh Lord, I need to help them. And it was like, you know, no, like I'm a customer too.
Right.
You know?
And that is why training is important, to help people who may not realize that it's you know, that they're being biased, you know? So yeah. Okay, Wayne.
Okay, Mr. Scott, if elected as supervisor of elections, what will you do to alleviate absentee voter fraud by candidates and their followers?
Absentee voter fraud. So, when you say that, you're talking about like some of the ballot harvesting type of stuff. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I've seen stories before, on different things with the absentee ballots,
Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
the handling of them, the signatures, signing people's signatures. I just can't focus just on one thing. It was a few that I have read in the newspapers and saw on the news.
Okay. So, my impression is that a lot of that type of stuff, when people are out there, a lot of times when they're talking about voter fraud, a lot of that has to do with trying to suppress the vote. So they're trying to find ways to make it more difficult, make it more complicated. And for me, I'm all about trying to simplify and make it easy. So, what has really been found when you look at it, because you talk about the signature piece. We have really good systems in place to make sure that that we're actually verifying the signatures. And there's actually concern on the other end that that too many ballots are being rejected because the signatures don't match. So at the same time, you asked me before about putting people's signatures online where they can go and check and see what their signature looks like. Like, yeah, I don't want to do anything that makes it easier for people to be able to go out there and have some kind of shenanigans going on. But at the same time, I won't be the type of supervisor of elections who goes out and looks for ways to make it more difficult. Because there's just no evidence. There's lots of stories, there's lots of things that are out there that way. But as far as evidence, as far as any kind of evidence being brought forward and prosecutions happening, it is extremely, extremely rare. And I'll say this, it also doesn't make sense to commit fraud. And I'll tell you why. There are, like I mentioned before, when you talk about voter turnout being like 23% in an election like we're having right now. There are hundreds of thousands of people right here in Broward County that you could go activate and get them to vote. Like get people to actually vote. You don't have to cheat. You don't have to commit fraud. That's actually harder and it's riskier. And there's no guarantee it's going to work. What works is to go out and activate people and get people to go vote legally. And then if you do that, then that's how you win an election. And, to me, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to commit fraud, and there's just not really any evidence that it's happening on a widespread level. The stories that are out there, from what I can tell, those stories are generally coming from the Republican Party, and they're coming from people that want to try to suppress the vote, try to keep us from voting.
Yes, no doubt. That's where it usually comes from. I remember hearing stories all about from Acorn with votes. I mean, it comes directly from the Republicans. I mean, and it's clearly to suppress the vote. It's almost like, the voters vote for, I believe that was Amendment 4, with the restoration of rights for felons to vote again. And look what the legislatures go and do. The will of the people. I mean,
one thing that Florida is famous for is for being evenly divided and having these really close elections. But over 65% of Floridians voted for Amendment 4. That wasn't close. I mean, we overwhelmingly supported that. You can't get 65% of Floridians to agree on anything. But they agreed on that. And then never mind what the people want. We're going to go out and change it and do what we want to do anyway. It's unbelievable, really. It's unbelievable.
And this is my last question here I have for you. Do you think what happened in the 2000 election here in Florida with the Bush-Gore recount or whatever, the whole scenario, do you think that can happen this year with everything, like with the pandemic, the votes, just hearing Trump on TV, just trying to put doubt that, things are going to be corrupt. Do you think do you see a scenario of in November it coming down again and they announce one candidate and we wake up 5 o'clock that morning and it's tied up? Or do you see a scenario like that can happen again here in Florida?
Yes, and there's a lot to unpack there, because one thing when we talk about voter suppression, one thing you also always hear from Republicans is they want to stop you from counting. and they just want to say, oh, let's just take the number what it is right now, and oh, it's the deadline. We don't want to actually finish counting and find out what the real number is. We want to stop right now while we're ahead. And it's, and basically that's what happened in 2000. But we also saw that in 2018 as well. We saw the protests and all the people out there saying, stop counting, stop counting, stop counting. But really one thing that was critical about 2000 was that you had basically, the Florida Supreme Court basically decided to said, hey, let's finish the recount. Let's figure out who actually won this election. And then the Supreme Court overruled that. And the Supreme Court basically ended up deciding that election for Bush and putting Bush in. And it really went against sort of like what Republicans always talk about. Republicans always talk about letting the local control, letting states' rights, and letting the states have the final say. But then on that case, which our Supreme Court is controlled by Republicans.
Yes.
They went completely against their own ideology and had the federal government interfere with what the state had decided to do in order to give the presidency over to a Republican. So we're in that position exactly now, maybe even more so than we were in 2000, but we have a Supreme Court that I believe absolutely will step in and hand another term to Trump. And that just means that we need to make sure that it's not close. We want to make sure there's no recounts, because the thing is that if we actually turn out, it was only 61% or something in 2018 when we here in Broward County. And you got to know, Broward County is, about, we get 3 Democrat votes for every 1 Republican vote here in Broward County. Mm-hmm. So what were you gonna say?
And I was going to say, with the help of Secretary of State Katherine Harris back then in 2000.
Oh, yeah. But, we have 3 Democratic votes for every 1 Republican vote here in Broward County. So, we just need to turn out and get more. We need to get that voter turnout up. With it only being 61%, that's just a little bit more than half. So we've got a lot more registered voters in Broward County that just don't bother to show up. And we saw how close that race was, how close we came in a bunch of races. We had to do these recounts, and it was within a 1% margin. There's a huge opportunity. Anybody who thinks, oh, it doesn't matter, I don't need to show up to vote. Man, if you just actually look at the numbers, it makes your head hurt to think of all the people who decided not to show up. If they just show up, there's no doubt Trump is out of there. We just got to show up. That's all it is.
And we had the hanging chads back then in that 2000 election where they had the chads, and we don't have that anymore. Thank God they got rid of that system, and
the butterfly
ballots. The bubble-in system.
We do still have recounts. We have paper ballots, and we have recounts, and we have deadlines that are not realistic, and that's really what it comes down to, because that's where the problems come up. The problems come up when you have this deadline. And if we don't make the deadline, the question is, do you want to know who won the election, or do you just want to stop counting and call it right now? Right. And that's, the people got to demand that we actually finish counting and call the election for who actually won. At the end of the day, Al Gore won in 2000. He had the most votes, but we had a deadline, and we had to stop and go with the number we had at the deadline. And that's not right. It's not. You have to count all the votes.
He won the popular vote, but you have the electoral college, which is garbage, and that's how they get through, get by. So, all right, Mr. Joe Scott, you have the floor. Tell the people and the voters of Broward County why we should elect you as the next supervisor of elections.
So I believe that, this job has changed quite a bit over the years. And the type of people that, we've looked to be our supervisors of elections in the past, a lot of times it's people come from political backgrounds, people that are, really well connected. And, the job has changed to a degree that it's really about professionalism at this point. And while we want somebody who has passion for voting rights, we also need somebody who has real professional skills, who has something that they bring to the table that's actually going to help make a difference. What I do for a living right now is that I integrate complex systems into complex organizations. I make those organizations more efficient, more sustainable, and improve cybersecurity for the organizations I work with. That is the type of experience that I bring to our Supervisor of Elections office. Technology will not stop moving forward. And if you elect a Supervisor of Elections who can barely turn on a computer, we are going to have a lot of problems in the future. It's really important that we have a tech-savvy Supervisor of Elections. That is what this job is about now. And I'm the only person in this race who has that background. I studied computer science and cybersecurity at West Point, highly recognized as one of the best leadership institutions in the world. That's where I learned to be a leader. That's where I learned about technology. That's where I learned about cybersecurity. And I've been in leadership roles now for the past 20 years. So I've grown and developed as a leader. And at the same time, I understand the systems that we're working with, and I know how to make them work for the people of Broward County. And that's what really matters, is somebody who can get in there and do the job. And that's why I want you all to vote for me, because I have the professional skills to get the job done and get it done right. So vote for me, Joe Scott. Voting is now. So, the last day, today is the last day. It is August 8th. You need to order your vote by mail ballot by 5 p.m. If you're ordering your vote by mail ballot today, I would not mail it back. If you want to mail your ballot back, you need to get it in the mailbox this weekend by Monday morning. It needs to be in the mailbox. After that, I would really urge you to take that vote by mail ballot in to a actual polling site, to one of the early voting sites, I should say. You got to take it to an early voting site. You can't take it in on election day. You can actually go on the Broward SOE website and check the status when you mail that ballot back. For those of you who mail your ballots back, you can go to Broward SOE, and there's a little yellow box that says check voter status /update. And when you click that little yellow box and you go in, you put your name and your birthday in there, and you can check the status of your mail ballot. You have to scroll to the bottom. Now, the website's a little tricky, and this is something I'm going to fix when I get there. But within the window, there's the big window, and you have the scroll bar on the side, and you scroll to the bottom. There's actually a smaller window in there that has its own scroll bar, and you got to scroll to the bottom of both windows in order to see the status bar. Now, the reason I say that is that if you get to the point where it's election day and they don't have your ballot back yet, you can still vote, even if you sent your ballot in. If they haven't gotten your ballot back and it's lost in the mail, you go to your polling station and you let them know that you mailed the ballot in. And you let them know that you need to vote on a provisional ballot. So you can go to your polling station and you can vote on a provisional ballot on election day. So really you have a backup. And you have ways of checking to see if your ballot made it back. So I believe in vote by mail. All right. I voted by mail as a Broward County resident living in South Korea in 2006 and in Iraq in 2008. I voted, my vote by mail ballot made it right back here in Wisconsin. So those of us who live in Deerfield Beach, our ballot is going to make it to Lauderhill. It will. You can use the vote by mail system, and you can even check and verify that your ballot made it in. I want people to use it, and I want people to make sure that they vote either way. Even if something does happen, go vote.
Yes, no doubt.
That's a very, very good information you just gave to the people out there. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Scott, he's running for the Broward County Supervisor of Elections. Good luck to you, sir, first and foremost. Good luck to you. And thank you for stopping by the Adams Brothers podcast and speaking with us. And when you win,
come back.
Forget about black media. We want you to come back by and talk to us and give us some ideas, and maybe we can give you some ideas that can help the people here in Broward County and the community. And again, good luck to you, sir. And we appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you. And I appreciate you guys having me. And I appreciate you guys doing this type of show to help keep the people informed. And, what you guys are doing is awesome. And I appreciate it. And I'll definitely be back on. I hope you guys will have me back on.
Oh, we will. We will.
We will. We will.
All right.
Hold you to that.
We want to hold you to it, too.
All right.
Well, there you go. Joe Scott, he's running for the Supervisor of Elections. Good luck to you, sir. We know you want to get out there on the campaign trail, so we're going to let you get on out there, and good luck. And have a great evening.
You too. You guys take care. Thank you.
Okay.